What happens when a heartbroken secretary hires a fake boyfriend to make her ex jealous and discovers he's been hiding $1 million secret? Before we start, drop a comment with where you're watching from and rate this story 1 to 10. Enjoy the story. The sound of Emily Carter's high heels echoed through the marble corridor of the 32nd floor of the Chrysler Building, each step a desperate attempt to maintain her composure. Her hands trembled as she held the coffee cup that had long since gone cold, and her green eyes, normally full of life, were red from holding back tears. "Emily, are you okay?" asked Sarah, the receptionist, noticing the pallor on her colleague's face. "I'm fine," Emily lied, forcing a smile that fooled no one. How could she be fine after what had happened in the conference room just an hour before? The morning had started like any other Monday in November. Autumn painted Central Park in golden tones that could be seen from the office windows, and Emily had arrived early, as always, to prepare the agenda for James Mitchell, marketing director at Sterling & Associates. They had been dating for 2 years, a relationship she kept discreet in the office, following company policies. But everything changed when she entered his office to deliver the monthly reports. "Emily, we need to talk," James had said, without even looking up from the papers on his desk. His voice had a cold tone she had never heard before. "Of course, honey. About the Thompson Industries project? I've already reviewed all the documents and—" "It's not about work." He finally looked at her, and Emily felt her stomach freeze. "It's about us." The words that followed were like stab wounds. 2 years of relationship, future plans, all those nights in his Upper East Side apartment watching old movies and planning a life together. Everything crumbling in a matter of minutes. "I met someone," he had said with the coldness of someone discussing sales figures. "Victoria Ashworth from the International Division. We started seeing each other and, well, this thing between us needs to end." Emily remembered standing there, stunned, while he continued talking about how it would be better for everyone and how he hoped they could maintain professionalism. Victoria Ashworth, the impeccable blonde who wore Armani suits and spoke 4 languages, the woman who had arrived from the London branch just 3 months ago. "Emily?" Sarah's voice brought her back to the present. "Are you sure you're okay? You look..." "Look like what? Like an idiot who believed her boss actually cared about her?" Emily laughed bitterly, surprising herself with her own frankness. Sarah approached, lowering her voice. "Oh my God, James, he broke up with you." Emily nodded, feeling the tears finally escape. There she was, Emily Carter, 28 years old, NYU Business Administration graduate, reduced to crying in the office hallway like a heartbroken teenager. "That jerk," Sarah murmured. "And I thought he was one of the good ones. Men, right? They make you believe in fairy tales, and then, Sarah, please don't spread this around, okay? It's humiliating enough already." But Emily knew it was too late. In an office like that, news traveled faster than the express elevator. By the end of the day, everyone would know that James Mitchell had traded his secretary for the international executive. The rest of the morning was torture. Emily tried to concentrate on work, but every time James passed by her desk, she felt a mixture of anger and shame. Worse still, when Victoria Ashworth appeared for a meeting with him, Emily had to be professional and serve coffee to the woman who had destroyed her life. "Thank you, Emily," Victoria said with a smile that seemed genuine, but which Emily interpreted as condescending. "James always speaks very highly of your work." "I bet he does," Emily thought, forcing a smile, probably among other intimate comments. During lunch, Emily walked alone through the busy streets of Midtown, passing hot dog vendors and street artists, trying to process everything that had happened. The smell of roasted chestnuts mixed with the aroma of coffee from food trucks created a typical New York olfactory symphony, but even that couldn't console her. She sat on a bench in Bryant Park, watching people hurry by, each immersed in their own world of problems and dreams. A pigeon approached, obviously expecting crumbs from the sandwich Emily had bought but couldn't eat. "Having a bad day too?" she asked the pigeon, which tilted its head as if it understood. "At least you don't have to go back to the office and pretend everything's fine." Her phone buzzed with a message from James. "Please keep this professional. We have a lot of work ahead." Emily laughed humorlessly. Professional? As if it were so simple to erase 2 years of relationship and go back to treating him just as a boss. as if she could simply turn off feelings like flipping a switch. When she returned to the office, things got worse. Emily noticed the pitying looks from colleagues, the whispers that stopped when she approached. Margaret from accounting even had the audacity to come to her desk and say, "Oh, honey, I always knew this wouldn't work out. A man who gets involved with his subordinate is never serious." "Thanks for the solidarity, Margaret," Emily replied with sarcasm, but the woman didn't catch the irony. The worst moment of the day came at 4 in the afternoon, when James left his office accompanied by Victoria, laughing at some private joke. They passed right in front of Emily's desk, and for a second, James looked at her. She saw something that could be regret in his eyes, but it was just a flash before he looked away. "Victoria, how about we have dinner at that Italian restaurant in Soho tonight?" she heard James say as they walked away. The same restaurant where he had taken Emily on their first date, where he had said she was special, different from the others. Emily felt a wave of nausea and ran to the bathroom. She locked herself in a stall and finally let all the tears out. She cried for the humiliation, for the betrayal, for the shattered dreams. She cried because she had believed that love could flourish even in Manhattan's cold corporate environment. When she finally composed herself and returned to her desk, she found an email about the company's annual dinner, which would take place in 2 weeks at the Rainbow Room, the most elegant event of the year, where everyone showed up accompanied, dressed in their finest attire, celebrating another successful year at Sterling and Associates. Emily had always imagined going to the event with James. She had even bought a navy blue dress especially for the occasion, dreaming of the perfect night at one of New York's most iconic venues. Now, the mere idea of showing up alone while James paraded around with Victoria made her stomach churn. "Over my dead body," she murmured to herself, already imagining the gossip, the pitying looks, the public humiliation. But as she gathered her things to leave, a spark of rebellion ignited in her chest. Why should she hide? Why should she give James and the entire company the satisfaction of seeing her destroyed? Walking through Manhattan's streets toward her small village apartment, Emily made a decision. She would go to the company dinner, and she wouldn't go alone. She just needed to figure out how to get a date in 2 weeks, when her confidence was in shambles and her heart was still bleeding. But that was a bridge she would cross when she got there. For now it was just about putting one foot in front of the other and surviving another day in her new reality. Emily's small studio apartment in Greenwich Village had never felt smaller. She sat cross-legged on her worn leather couch, surrounded by crumpled tissues and an empty pint of Ben & Jerry's Chunky Monkey, staring at her laptop screen with the determination of a general planning a military campaign. "Okay, Emily," she muttered to herself, "you need a date. How hard can it be?" The cursor blinked mockingly at her from the Google search bar. She had already exhausted the obvious options. Her college friends were either married, living in other states, or had already declined her increasingly desperate invitations. Her cousin Jake was busy with his new boyfriend, and her neighbor Mr. Thompson was 83 and used a walker. Outside her window, the sounds of the village came alive, street musicians playing jazz, couples laughing as they walked to dinner, the distant honking of taxis. All reminders of the romantic life she thought she had, but had just lost. Her phone buzzed with a text from her best friend Jessica, who lived in Los Angeles. "Girl, just hire an escort." Emily nearly choked on her wine. "Jess, I'm not hiring a—" "You know what? That's illegal and weird." "Not that kind, dummy. Like a professional date. They have services for that now. It's called the gig economy." Emily rolled her eyes but found herself typing "Professional Date Service New York" into Google. The results were questionable. Most looked like thinly veiled adult services, and the few legitimate ones required weeks of background checks and cost more than her monthly rent. She was about to give up when her phone rang. "Emily, thank God you answered." It was her college roommate Lisa calling from Boston. "I have the weirdest story to tell you. Lisa, unless it involves you knowing a single attractive man who's free next Friday night and doesn't mind pretending to be my boyfriend for 3 hours, I'm not in the mood for weird stories." "Actually," Lisa paused dramatically, "that's exactly what this is about. Remember my sister Karen, the one who works in tech?" Emily vaguely remembered Karen, a brilliant MIT graduate who had started her own software company. The genius sister, yeah. Well, she just launched this crazy new app. It's called Husband for a Day. Basically, women can hire guys for emotional support at social events. Like, they're not escorts or anything sketchy. They're just temporary emotional support husbands. Emily sat up straighter. Are you serious? Dead serious. Karen says it's for situations exactly like yours, when you need a +1 for work events, family weddings, high school reunions. The guys are all vetted, professional, and they're trained to be supportive and charming without any expectations, if you know what I mean. Emily's heart started beating faster. This sounds too good to be true. Karen's looking for beta testers before the official launch. I could get you early access if you want. Lisa, I could kiss you right now. Save it for your temporary husband. After Lisa hung up, Emily found herself staring at the app download link Lisa had texted her. The logo was surprisingly elegant. A simple golden ring with the words "Husband for a Day" in sophisticated font. The tagline read, "Emotional support when you need it most." She downloaded the app with shaking fingers. The interface was clean and professional, nothing like the sketchy websites she'd encountered earlier. There was a detailed FAQ section explaining that this was strictly a companionship service for social events, with clear boundaries and professional standards. The sign-up process was thorough. Background checks, references, a detailed questionnaire about what she was looking for. Emily found herself typing, "Event. Corporate dinner date needed. November 15th. Duration, 3 to 4 hours. Special requirements. Must be comfortable in formal business setting. Ability to make small talk with executives. Preferably attractive enough to make my ex-boyfriend jealous, but not so attractive that I look like I'm trying too hard." She paused at that last part, then deleted it and retyped, "Professional demeanor required." The app asked for her preferences. Age range, 28-35. Height, tall enough that she could wear heels. Interests, professional, well-read, sense of humor. It felt like online dating, except she was literally shopping for a temporary boyfriend. Within minutes, her phone chimed with matches. The first few profiles looked promising. Professional headshots, impressive bios, glowing reviews from previous clients. Then she saw him. Profile name, Daniel B., age, 32. Profession, business consultant. Bio, Manhattan native with a passion for helping others navigate challenging social situations. Excellent conversationalist, comfortable in formal settings, and committed to making your event memorable for all the right reasons. His photo showed a man with warm brown eyes, dark hair slightly tousled in that effortlessly attractive way, and a smile that looked genuine rather than practiced. He was wearing a navy suit that fit him perfectly, standing in what looked like a Manhattan rooftop bar with the city skyline behind him. What caught Emily's attention wasn't just that he was undeniably handsome, it was something in his expression. He looked kind, approachable, like someone who would actually listen when she talked, instead of just waiting for his turn to speak. His reviews were glowing. "Daniel made my sister's wedding so much less stressful. He was charming with my family and made me feel confident all night." Sarah M. Professional, punctual, and genuinely funny. Would definitely recommend. Jennifer K. Saved me from the most awkward work event of my life. Daniel is a natural at conversation and made everyone think I was dating up. Amanda R. Emily found herself clicking on his profile again and again, studying his face. There was something about his smile that made her stomach flutter, which was ridiculous, because this was a business transaction, not a real date. The app had a messaging feature. Emily stared at the blank message box for 10 minutes before finally typing, "Hi, Daniel. I have a corporate event next Friday that I'd love your help with. It's a formal dinner at the Rainbow Room. Are you available?" She hit send before she could overthink it. Her phone buzzed almost immediately. "Hi, Emily. The Rainbow Room sounds wonderful. I'd be happy to help. Could we set up a brief phone call to discuss the details? I find it helps to understand the dynamics of the situation beforehand." Emily's palms started sweating. A phone call meant this was getting real, but his message was professional and thoughtful. He wasn't just saying yes for the money. "Of course. I'm free tonight after 7 p.m. if that works for you." Perfect. I'll call you at 7:30. Looking forward to speaking with you. Emily looked at her reflection in her black laptop screen. Her hair was in a messy bun. She was wearing an old NYU sweatshirt with a hole in the sleeve, and she had mascara smudged under one eye from her earlier crying session. "It's just a phone call," she told herself. "He can't see you looking like a disaster." But she found herself jumping in the shower anyway, blow-drying her hair and putting on actual clothes, as if getting dressed would somehow make her sound more confident over the phone. At exactly 7:30, her phone rang. "Hello, Emily? This is Daniel." His voice was warm and reassuring, with just a hint of a New York accent. Not the fake sophistication of Wall Street guys, but the genuine confidence of someone comfortable in his own skin. "Hi, Daniel. Thank you for calling." "Of course. So tell me about this event. The Rainbow Room is quite a venue. This must be important." Emily found herself relaxing despite her nerves. "It's my company's annual dinner. Very formal, very political. The thing is..." She hesitated, then decided honesty was the best approach. "I recently went through a bad breakup with someone from work, and I really don't want to show up alone and deal with all the pity and gossip." "Ah," Daniel said, and she could hear understanding in his voice. "The dreaded office drama situation. I'm sorry you're dealing with that." "Yeah, it's been challenging. I just want to walk in there with confidence, show everyone that I'm doing fine." "And you are doing fine," Daniel said firmly. "The fact that you're handling this situation with such grace and taking control of the narrative shows real strength." Emily felt tears prick her eyes, but for the first time in days, they weren't tears of sadness. When was the last time someone had called her strong? "Thank you," she whispered. "So here's what I'm thinking," Daniel continued. "We should meet for coffee beforehand, maybe the day before the event. That way, we can get comfortable with each other, work out our story about how we met, discuss your colleagues so I know who's who. The more natural we seem together, the more convincing it will be." "You've really thought this through," Daniel chuckled. "I've been doing this for a while. Trust me, preparation is everything. The goal isn't just to give you a date, it's to give you an evening where you feel absolutely confident and in control." They talked for another 20 minutes, working out the logistics. Daniel would pick her up at her apartment. They'd arrive fashionably late to make an entrance, and he'd stay by her side throughout the evening. His rate was surprisingly reasonable, less than she'd spent on the dress she'd bought for the occasion. "One last thing," Daniel said as they were wrapping up. "What's your ex's name? I like to know who I'm dealing with." "James Mitchell. He's the marketing director." "And the new girlfriend?" "Victoria Ashworth, International Division. Blonde, gorgeous, perfect." "Emily," Daniel's voice was gentle but firm, "I guarantee you that by the end of this evening, James Mitchell is going to realize he made the biggest mistake of his life." After they hung up, Emily sat in her apartment feeling something she hadn't felt in weeks: hope. And maybe, just maybe, a little excitement. She was going to walk into that dinner on the arm of a devastatingly handsome man, and for the first time since her world fell apart, she was going to feel like she was winning. Little did she know that Daniel Brooks, successful CEO of Brooks Technology Solutions, was sitting in his penthouse apartment overlooking Central Park, staring at his phone and wondering why he felt so invested in helping a woman he'd never met get revenge on her ex-boyfriend. This was supposed to be a simple favor for his best friend Marcus, the creator of the app. Just a test run to help work out any bugs in the system. So why did he find himself already looking forward to meeting Emily Carter in person? Emily changed her outfit 3 times before settling on dark jeans, a cream cashmere sweater, and her favorite ankle boots. She was meeting Daniel at Joe Coffee on Waverly Place, a cozy spot in the village that felt casual enough not to seem like a real date, but nice enough that she wouldn't feel underdressed if he turned out to be even more attractive in person. "It's not a date," she reminded herself for the 100th time as she walked down the tree-lined street, autumn leaves crunching under her feet. "It's a business meeting. A very weird business meeting, but still business." She arrived 5 minutes early and ordered a cappuccino, choosing a small table by the window, where she could watch for him. The cafe buzzed with the typical village crowd, NYU students with laptops, artists sketching in notebooks, and professionals like herself grabbing coffee between meetings. At exactly 2 p.m., the door chimed, and Emily's breath caught in her throat. Daniel was even more attractive in person. The photos hadn't captured the way he moved with quiet confidence, or how his eyes crinkled slightly when he smiled. He was tall, she estimated about 6'2", and his dark hair had that perfectly imperfect style that probably took longer to achieve than her own. He wore a charcoal wool coat over dark jeans and a hunter green sweater that brought out the gold flecks in his brown eyes. He spotted her immediately and walked over with a smile that made her stomach flutter. "Emily, I'm Daniel." His handshake was firm and warm. "Thank you for meeting me." "Thank you for doing this," she replied, trying to sound more confident than she felt. "Can I get you something?" "I'll grab it. Another cappuccino for you." She nodded, impressed that he'd noticed what she was drinking. While he ordered, she watched him interact with the barista. Polite, friendly, the kind of easy charm that seemed genuine rather than practiced. "So," he said, settling into the chair across from her, "tell me about tomorrow night. Walk me through what we're walking into." Emily launched into a description of Sterling and Associates' annual dinner, the key players, and the office dynamics. Daniel listened intently, asking thoughtful questions and taking mental notes. "James will definitely be there with Victoria," she concluded. "They'll probably sit at the head table since he's a director. I'm usually at table 7 with the other administrative staff." "Usually?" "Well, when I was dating James, I sat with the executives. Now," she shrugged, trying to look nonchalant, "now you're sitting with the people who actually do the work, while the executives take credit for it," Daniel said with a grin. "Trust me, table 7 will be more fun." Emily laughed despite herself. "You sound like you speak from experience. I've been to my share of corporate events. The real power in any company is usually sitting at the tables everyone ignores." Something in his tone made her curious, but before she could ask, he leaned forward conspiratorially. "Here's what I'm thinking for our story. We met 3 weeks ago at the Morgan Library. You were there for a lecture on modern American literature. I was researching a client presentation. We struck up a conversation about the Gatsby manuscript, and I asked you for coffee." "The Morgan Library," Emily repeated, impressed. "That's really specific. Details make it believable. Plus, it makes us both sound cultured and intelligent, which never hurts at these things." He pulled out his phone and showed her a photo of the library's exterior. "I actually was there last month, so if anyone asks about the current exhibition, I can handle it. You really have thought of everything. I've learned that confidence comes from preparation. The more comfortable we are with our story, the more natural we'll seem together." They spent the next hour crafting their fictional relationship. They'd been on 6 dates, hadn't slept together yet, important for office gossip management, and were taking things slow, but felt optimistic about the future. Daniel suggested they share a few personal details to make their connection seem real. "I grew up in Brooklyn," he told her. "Park Slope, before it was trendy. My parents still live in the same brownstone where I learned to ride a bike. I went to Columbia for business, and I have an irrational fear of pigeons." Emily burst out laughing. "Pigeons? Really? Don't judge. They're basically flying rats with better PR." His grin was infectious. "What about you?" "Small town in upstate New York, population 3,000. I came to the city for college and never left. I have a secret addiction to reality TV. I can't function without coffee, and I once got lost in Central Park for 3 hours because I refused to ask for directions. Stubborn and caffeinated, I like it." The easy banter felt natural, like they'd known each other for months rather than minutes. Emily found herself relaxing for the first time since the breakup, laughing at Daniel's stories about disastrous corporate events he'd attended. There was this one dinner where the CEO's wife had too much wine and started telling everyone about their marriage counseling, Daniel said, gesturing with his coffee cup. "I spent 2 hours deflecting conversations and pretending I hadn't heard anything. You're like a professional social bodyguard." That's actually not a bad way to put it. As they talked, Emily noticed little things about him. The way he automatically stood when she went to the restroom, how he insisted on paying for their coffees despite her protests, the fact that he put his phone face down on the table and never once checked it during their conversation. "Can I ask you something?" she said as they prepared to leave. Why do you do this? The app, I mean. You're clearly intelligent and successful. Why spend your evenings helping strangers navigate awkward social situations? Daniel was quiet for a moment, and Emily thought she saw something vulnerable flicker across his face. I guess I believe everyone deserves to feel confident and supported, especially when they're going through difficult times. He met her eyes. Plus, I like helping people rewrite their stories. Tomorrow night isn't about James or what he did to you. It's about you taking control of your narrative. Emily felt her heart skip. When was the last time someone had talked about her with such genuine respect? Thank you, she said softly. I mean it. I felt pretty powerless lately, and this gives me hope. You were never powerless, Emily. You just needed reminding. They exchanged phone numbers and confirmed the plan for tomorrow. Daniel would pick her up at 6:30, they'd arrive at the Rainbow Room by 7:15, and he'd stay until the event ended around 10 p.m. One last thing, he said, as they stood outside the cafe. The late afternoon sun caught the gold in his hair, and Emily had to remind herself again that this wasn't real. What's your favorite thing about yourself? The thing you're most proud of? The question caught her off guard. That's random. Humor me. Emily thought for a moment. I guess I'm proud that I'm loyal. Even when people don't deserve it, I stick by them. James used to say it was my weakness, but I think it's actually my strength. James is an idiot, Daniel said firmly. Loyalty is rare and valuable. Don't let anyone convince you otherwise. As she watched him walk away, Emily felt a mix of excitement and confusion. Tomorrow night was supposed to be about showing James what he'd lost and proving to her colleagues that she was doing fine. So why did she find herself looking forward to spending the evening with Daniel for reasons that had nothing to do with revenge? Meanwhile, Daniel walked toward his penthouse apartment, his mind racing. He'd done this before, helped women navigate difficult social situations, played the perfect temporary boyfriend, provided emotional support without complications. But something about Emily Carter was different. Maybe it was the way she'd laughed at his pigeon phobia, or how she'd called loyalty her greatest strength, even though it had recently caused her heartbreak. Maybe it was the vulnerability in her green eyes when she talked about feeling powerless. Whatever it was, Daniel found himself genuinely invested in tomorrow night's success. And for the first time since he'd started helping his friend Marcus test the app, he wasn't sure if he was doing it for the business data or for personal reasons. He pulled out his phone and texted Marcus, "The app is working perfectly. User experience is unexpectedly engaging." What he didn't text was that Emily Carter had just become the most interesting woman he'd met in years, and tomorrow night couldn't come fast enough. Emily stood in front of her full-length mirror, hands trembling as she fastened the last button on her navy blue dress. The silk fabric hugged her curves perfectly, and the subtle sparkle in the thread caught the light like stars. She'd bought this dress 3 months ago, dreaming of walking into the Rainbow Room on James's arm. Tonight it would serve a very different purpose. Her phone buzzed with a text from Daniel. "On my way up. You're going to be amazing tonight." The butterflies in her stomach multiplied. She'd spent 2 hours getting ready. Hair swept into an elegant updo with a few strategic curls framing her face, makeup that enhanced her green eyes, and her grandmother's pearl earrings for luck. She looked good. Better than good, actually. She looked like someone who belonged at Manhattan's most exclusive events. A knock at her door made her jump. "Coming!" she called, grabbing her clutch and taking one last look in the mirror. "You can do this, Emily Carter. You're strong, you're beautiful, and you deserve better than James Mitchell." She opened the door and nearly forgot how to breathe. Daniel stood in her hallway, wearing a perfectly tailored black tuxedo that looked like it had been made specifically for him. His hair was styled just enough to look effortless, and he wore a confident smile that made her knees weak. In his hand was a small corsage box. "Wow," he said softly, his eyes taking in her appearance with obvious appreciation. "Emily, you look absolutely stunning." "You clean up pretty well yourself," she managed, trying to keep her voice steady. "Is that for me?" "I thought we should make this convincing." He opened the box to reveal a delicate white orchid corsage. "May I?" She nodded, extending her wrist. His fingers were gentle as he fastened the corsage, and the brief contact sent electricity up her arm. This close, she could smell his cologne, something expensive and masculine that made her want to step closer rather than back away. "Perfect," he said, stepping back to admire his work. "Ready to show Sterling and Associates what they're dealing with?" "I think so. Actually, no, I'm terrified, but I'm ready to be terrified in a really expensive dress." Daniel laughed, offering her his arm. Terrified in designer clothing is still terrified in style. That's all that matters tonight. The car he'd arranged was waiting outside, a sleek black sedan with a driver who greeted them both professionally. As they settled into the leather seats, Emily felt like she was living in a movie. "I have to ask," she said as they pulled into traffic, "how does someone become a professional date? This seems like a very specific career path." Daniel was quiet for a moment, and she wondered if she'd overstepped. "I guess I've always been good at reading people, understanding what they need in social situations, and I believe everyone deserves to feel supported when they're facing something difficult." That's a very diplomatic answer. It's also a true one. He turned to look at her, his expression serious. "Emily, I want you to know that regardless of what happens tonight, whether James realizes what an idiot he is, whether your colleagues are impressed, whatever, you're going to be fine. You're stronger than you think." She felt tears threaten and blinked them back quickly. "Don't make me cry, I'll ruin my makeup. Waterproof mascara?" "Always. Smart woman." As their car pulled up to 30 Rockefeller Plaza, Emily's nerves returned full force. The Rainbow Room occupied the 65th floor of the iconic building, and just looking up at it made her dizzy. She'd been here once before, for her first Sterling and Associates dinner as James's secret girlfriend, but tonight felt completely different. "Remember," Daniel said as they waited for the elevator, "we're not here to prove anything to anyone else. We're here because you deserve to feel confident and beautiful at your company's biggest event of the year." The elevator ride felt both eternal and instant. When the doors opened onto the Rainbow Room's elegant Art Deco interior, Emily gasped. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a breathtaking view of Manhattan's glittering skyline, while crystal chandeliers cast warm light over tables draped in ivory linens. A jazz quartet played softly in the corner, and servers in crisp white jackets moved efficiently between guests holding champagne flutes. "Breathe," Daniel murmured in her ear, his hand warm on the small of her back. "You belong here." They paused at the entrance, and Emily felt every conversation pause as heads turned their way. She heard whispers, saw surprised faces, and caught more than one woman giving Daniel an appreciative once-over. "Emily?" Sarah from reception appeared at her elbow, eyes wide with curiosity. "You look incredible. And you must be—" "Daniel Brooks," he said smoothly, extending his hand with that devastating smile. "I've heard so much about Emily's colleagues. She speaks very highly of everyone at Sterling." Sarah practically melted. "It's so nice to meet you. Emily, you didn't tell us you were seeing someone new." "We're taking things slow," Emily replied, surprised by how steady her voice sounded. "Daniel's been wonderfully patient with my crazy work schedule." "What do you do, Daniel?" Sarah asked, clearly fishing for details to share later. "I'm in consulting," he replied vaguely. "Mostly helping companies streamline their operations, not nearly as exciting as what Emily does here." Before Sarah could ask more questions, Margaret from accounting appeared, followed by several other colleagues. Emily found herself surrounded by people who had barely acknowledged her existence since the breakup, all suddenly fascinated by her mysterious new boyfriend. "How did you two meet?" asked Jennifer from HR, practically batting her eyelashes at Daniel. "The Morgan Library," Emily said, sticking to their practiced story. "I was there for a literature lecture, and Daniel was completely distracted by this beautiful woman asking thoughtful questions about Fitzgerald's manuscripts," Daniel finished, looking at Emily with such convincing adoration that she almost believed it herself. "I had to work up the courage for 20 minutes before I asked if she'd like to get coffee." "That's so romantic," Jennifer sighed. "Emily, you didn't tell us you were into literature." "Because you never bothered to ask," Emily thought, but smiled graciously instead. "I've always loved to read. Daniel and I have been exploring the city's literary history together." "That sounds amazing," said Tom from marketing, appearing with his wife Linda. "We should double date sometime?" Emily felt panic rise in her throat, but Daniel smoothly deflected. That would be wonderful once our schedules calm down. Emily's been so busy with the Thompson Industries campaign, and I'm traveling quite a bit for work. As the group continued chatting, Emily marveled at how effortlessly Daniel handled every question, every potential landmine. He had an answer for everything while revealing nothing, and somehow made everyone feel like they were his new best friend. Then she saw James. He was across the room at the bar, wearing the same tuxedo he'd worn to last year's dinner. Victoria stood beside him in a stunning red dress that probably cost more than Emily's monthly rent, her blonde hair perfectly styled, and her laugh carrying across the room like wind chimes. For a moment, Emily felt all her confidence evaporate. Victoria was everything she wasn't, tall, sophisticated, effortlessly elegant. No wonder James had chosen her. Emily. Daniel's voice was low and warm in her ear. Look at me. She turned, and he cupped her face gently with one hand, his thumb brushing her cheek. You are the most beautiful woman in this room, he said quietly, his brown eyes intense and sincere. And anyone who can't see that doesn't deserve your attention. For a moment, the noise of the party faded away. Emily felt like they were the only two people in the room, connected by something that felt far more real than their arranged agreement. Thank you, she whispered. Always. When she looked back toward the bar, James was staring directly at them, his face a mixture of surprise and something that looked suspiciously like jealousy. Victoria was still talking, oblivious to her boyfriend's distraction, while James watched Daniel's protective gesture with obvious shock. Emily felt a surge of satisfaction. For the first time in weeks, she was the one with the gorgeous date, the one who looked happy and confident. James could keep his perfect international executive. Emily had found someone, infinitely better. What she didn't know was that across the room, James Mitchell was having the uncomfortable realization that he might have made the biggest mistake of his life, and that the mysterious, impeccably dressed man treating Emily like a queen was about to make his evening very, very complicated. The real show was just beginning. Dinner was announced, and Emily found herself being escorted to table 7 by Daniel, who kept his hand protectively on the small of her back. She'd expected to feel awkward sitting with the administrative staff while her ex dined with the executives, but Daniel's presence changed everything. Ladies and gentlemen, he said as they approached the table, I'm Daniel Brooks, Emily's boyfriend. Thank you for letting me crash your party. The response was immediate and warm. Carol from legal, normally reserved to the point of being stern, actually giggled when Daniel complimented her earrings. Marcus from IT, who barely spoke to anyone, launched into an animated discussion about the latest tech trends after Daniel mentioned his consulting work. You're like a social magician, Emily whispered, as Daniel effortlessly drew out Janet from Human Resources, who was notorious for her shyness. I just listen, he replied quietly. Most people rarely feel heard. A little genuine attention goes a long way. As the first course arrived, a delicate butternut squash soup with truffle oil, Emily noticed James glancing over from the head table repeatedly. Victoria was deep in conversation with the senior partners, gesturing elegantly as she discussed international market expansion. But James seemed distracted. He's looking again, whispered Carol, who had apparently decided to become Emily's unofficial reconnaissance team. Who's looking? Asked Daniel innocently, though Emily caught the slight tightening around his eyes. Emily's ex, Carol explained with obvious relish. He's been staring over here since we sat down. I think he's realizing what he gave up. Daniel turned slightly, following Carol's gaze to the head table. When his eyes landed on James, his expression remained politely curious, but Emily felt something shift in his posture, a subtle straightening that reminded her of a predator spotting prey. Ah, Daniel said mildly, the infamous James Mitchell. Emily mentioned he was the marketing director. Do you know him? Emily asked, surprised by something in Daniel's tone. I might have heard the name in professional circles, Daniel replied vaguely. The marketing world is smaller than people think. Before Emily could ask what he meant, the main course arrived, and conversation shifted to safer topics. Daniel regaled the table with stories about his travels, asked thoughtful questions about everyone's work, and somehow made Janet from HR laugh so hard she snorted wine through her nose. "I can't believe you've been hiding this man from us," Carol declared as dessert was served. "Emily, you better lock this one down before someone else snatches him up." "I'm not going anywhere," Daniel said, looking directly at Emily with an intensity that made her stomach flutter. "Emily's stuck with me for as long as she'll have me." The comment should have felt like part of their act, but something in his voice made it sound remarkably sincere. As coffee was being served, the evening's program began. Richard Sterling, the company's founder, took the microphone to give his annual address. Emily half listened to the usual corporate platitudes about growth and innovation until Sterling's words caught her attention. "This year, we're particularly excited about our new partnership with Brooks Technology Solutions, one of Manhattan's fastest-growing consulting firms. Their innovative approach to digital transformation has already revolutionized how we approach client relationships." Emily felt Daniel go very still beside her. "In fact," Sterling continued, "we're honored to have their CEO joining our board of advisors next month. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Daniel Brooks." The room erupted in applause as a spotlight found their table. Emily turned to stare at Daniel in complete shock, her mouth falling open as the pieces clicked into place. Daniel Brooks, CEO, Board of Advisors. The man she'd hired as her fake boyfriend was one of the most successful entrepreneurs in New York City. "You're kidding me," she breathed, but her words were lost in the continued applause. Daniel stood gracefully, acknowledging the recognition with a modest wave before sitting back down. The spotlight moved away, but Emily continued staring at him in disbelief. "We need to talk," she hissed under her breath. "Later," he murmured back, his expression unreadable. But the evening's surprises weren't over. As Sterling continued his speech, introducing new initiatives and recognizing outstanding employees, Emily noticed increased activity at the head table. James had leaned over to whisper something urgent to Victoria, who looked suddenly pale. Other executives were checking their phones with frowns. Then Emily's own phone buzzed with a text from Sarah. "Check the company email, now." With shaking fingers, Emily accessed her work email on her phone. The latest message, sent just minutes ago, was from Richard Sterling himself. Subject: Leadership changes effective immediately. Dear Sterling Associates team, after careful consideration and review of recent personnel matters, we are announcing the following changes. James Mitchell will be transitioning out of his role as Marketing Director, effective Monday. We thank him for his contributions and wish him well in his future endeavors. Victoria Ashworth will be returning to our London office to oversee European operations, effective immediately. We will be announcing new leadership appointments next week. Best regards, Richard Sterling. Emily's hands trembled as she finished reading. Around her, other people were checking their phones and whispering urgently. At the head table, James had gone white, while Victoria looked like she might be sick. "Oh my God," Carol whispered, having read the email over Emily's shoulder. "They're both gone. James and Victoria are both out." Emily looked up to find Daniel watching her carefully. "Did you know about this?" she asked quietly. "I might have heard rumors," he admitted. "Corporate restructuring is often discussed at board level before it's announced." "Board level," Emily repeated slowly. "Because you're going to be on the board." "Emily, ladies and gentlemen," Sterling's voice cut through the murmur of conversations as news of the email spread. "I know many of you have just seen our internal announcement. These decisions were not made lightly, but they reflect our commitment to maintaining the highest standards of professionalism and integrity." The implications were clear to everyone in the room. James and Victoria's very public relationship had crossed professional boundaries, and Sterling Associates had decided to clean house. Emily felt a complex mix of emotions: vindication, relief, and something that might have been pity for James, despite everything he'd put her through. "Are you okay?" Daniel asked softly, leaning close so only she could hear. "I think so," she said honestly. "It's just a lot to process." "We should probably go," he suggested, glancing around at the chaos brewing as people processed the news. "This is about to become very uncomfortable for everyone involved." Emily nodded gratefully. As they stood to leave, she caught James's eye across the room. For a moment they looked at each other, the woman he'd discarded and the man she'd hired to help her get through the evening. James's expression was a mixture of regret, jealousy, and dawning realization that his choices had cost him far more than just Emily. "Emily, wait," James called out, starting to move toward their table. But Daniel stepped smoothly between them, his hand finding Emily's elbow. "I think it's time we called it a night," Daniel said pleasantly, but with an edge of steel in his voice that made James stop in his tracks. "Emily, shall we?" As they walked toward the exit, Emily heard whispers following them. "Did you see that? She's dating Daniel Brooks. No wonder she looked so confident tonight. James must be kicking himself." She definitely traded up. In the elevator down from the Rainbow Room, Emily finally found her voice. "So," she said carefully, "you're not actually a consultant." "I am a consultant," Daniel replied, "among other things. Other things like being the CEO of a major technology company." "That would be one of the other things, yes." Emily stared at him, trying to process everything that had happened. "Why didn't you tell me?" Daniel was quiet for a long moment, studying the elevator buttons as if they held the secrets of the universe. "Because," he said finally, "when I'm with you, I don't want to be Daniel Brooks, CEO. I just want to be Daniel, the guy who thinks you're incredible and wanted to help you get through a difficult evening." The elevator opened onto the lobby, but neither of them moved. "This complicates things," Emily said softly. "It doesn't have to. Daniel, you're about to be on my company's board of directors. I'm a secretary. This is what, Emily?" His voice was gentle but firm. "This is real. What happened tonight, what's happening between us, it's real. Everything else is just logistics." As they stepped out into the crisp November night, Emily realized that her simple plan for revenge had turned into something far more complex and infinitely more dangerous. She'd hired a fake boyfriend to make her ex jealous. Instead, she might just have fallen for a real one. The ride back to Emily's apartment was filled with charged silence. Daniel had asked his driver to take the scenic route through Central Park, and they sat in the back seat, watching the city lights blur past, both lost in their own thoughts. "I should probably be angry with you," Emily said finally, breaking the quiet. "Probably," Daniel agreed, his voice carefully neutral. "You lied to me. Well, not exactly lied, but you certainly didn't tell me the whole truth." "No, I didn't." Emily turned to study his profile in the dim light of the car. "Why aren't you defending yourself? Most men would be making excuses by now." Daniel was quiet for a moment, then looked directly at her. "Because you have every right to be upset. I should have told you who I was from the beginning." "So why didn't you?" "Honestly? At first it was because I was helping Marcus test the app. I thought it would be cleaner if I kept my real identity separate." He ran a hand through his hair, messing up his perfect styling. "But then I talked to you on the phone, and you were so genuine, so refreshingly honest about what you were going through. When was the last time someone talked to me like I was just a person, not a CEO, not a potential business connection, just Daniel?" Emily felt her anger begin to soften despite herself. "That still doesn't excuse—" "You're right, it doesn't. I kept quiet because I was being selfish. I liked being just Daniel with you. I liked that you weren't impressed by my title or my money or my connections. You liked me for me." The car pulled up outside Emily's building, but neither of them moved to get out. "The thing is," Emily said slowly, "I did like you for you. The Daniel I met at the coffee shop, the one who listened to my problems and made me laugh and treated me like I mattered. That person was real, wasn't he? Completely real. More real than I've been with anyone in years." Emily felt tears threatening and blinked them back. "But now everything's different. You're going to be on my company's board. You're this successful CEO and I'm just—" "Stop right there." Daniel's voice was firm. "You're Emily Carter. You're intelligent, loyal, funny, and strong enough to rebuild your life after someone tried to tear it down. You're the woman who made Table 7 the most entertaining place at that entire dinner party. You're the person who saw through all the corporate nonsense and called me out for not being completely honest." "Daniel, I'm not finished." He shifted to face her fully. "Do you want to know what I was thinking tonight when Sterling announced the partnership? I was thinking that I'd finally found someone worth taking risks for, and I might have just complicated everything beyond repair." Emily's heart was beating so fast, she was sure he could hear it. "What kind of risks?" The risk of letting someone see who I really am beneath all the business success. The risk of caring about someone more than quarterly projections and board meetings. The risk of admitting that what started as a favor for a friend has turned into the most important thing in my life. The air in the car felt charged with electricity. Emily could smell his cologne, could see the vulnerability in his eyes that his confident exterior usually hid. "Emily," he said softly, "I know this complicates things. I know it changes the dynamics. But I need you to know that everything I felt tonight, every moment of pride when you walked into that room, every surge of protectiveness when James looked at you, every second of joy watching you laugh with your colleagues, all of that was real." "How do I know that?" Emily whispered. "How do I know you're not just caught up in the moment in playing a role?" Instead of answering with words, Daniel leaned forward and cupped her face gently in his hands. "May I?" he asked quietly. Emily nodded, her breath catching as he kissed her softly. It was nothing like the practiced charm he'd displayed all evening. This was tentative, questioning, real. When they finally pulled apart, Emily felt dizzy. That, Daniel said, resting his forehead against hers, was definitely not part of the service. Emily laughed despite the emotional whirlwind in her chest. "Your friend Marcus might want to add that to the app features. Marcus can find his own test subjects. I'm officially retiring from the fake boyfriend business." "Oh, really? And what business are you getting into instead?" Daniel's smile was soft and genuine. "I'm hoping to try the real boyfriend business. If I can find the right client." Emily felt her heart skip. That sounds like a much more complicated arrangement, lots of unpredictable variables. "I'm good with complicated. I've built my career on solving complex problems." "And what if this particular problem doesn't want to be solved? What if she's happy being independent and figuring things out on her own?" "Then I'd respect that completely," Daniel said seriously. "But I'd also hope she might consider letting someone figure things out with her, as a partner, not a solution." Emily studied his face in the dim light, searching for any sign of insincerity. All she saw was hope and genuine affection. "There would be rules," she said finally. "I'd expect nothing less." "What kind of rules?" "Rule number 1, no more secrets. If we're doing this, and I'm not saying we are, but if we're doing this, complete honesty about everything." "Agreed." "What else?" "Rule number 2, I don't want to be treated like I'm fragile or need rescuing. I can take care of myself." "I've seen you in action, Emily. You're one of the strongest people I know. I wouldn't dream of trying to rescue you." "Rule number 3, this doesn't affect my job. I don't want special treatment or favoritism, because of whatever this is between us." Daniel nodded seriously. "Professional boundaries are important. Though I should mention that Sterling has been talking about promoting several administrative staff to account coordinator positions. Your name came up specifically before I ever met you." Emily's eyes widened. "Are you serious?" "Completely. Your work on the Thompson Industries campaign impressed several board members. Any promotion you get will be because you earned it, not because of me." For the first time all evening, Emily felt tears of joy rather than confusion. "I don't know what to say." "Say you'll give us a chance. Say you'll let me take you to dinner, a real dinner where I'm not pretending to be someone else and you're not trying to make anyone jealous. Just us, figuring out if this thing between us is as real as it feels." Emily looked out at her building, then back at Daniel. 3 hours ago, her biggest concern had been surviving an evening with her ex-boyfriend and his new girlfriend. Now she was sitting in a car with one of Manhattan's most successful entrepreneurs, who was asking her for a real chance at something that had started as pure fiction. "Okay," she said finally. "Okay? Okay, I'll give us a chance. But I have one more rule. Name it. Next time you pick me up for a date, you're not allowed to look that good in a tuxedo. It's not fair to the rest of the female population of Manhattan." Daniel threw back his head and laughed, a genuine, joyful sound that made Emily's heart soar. "I'll do my best to tone down the devastating handsomeness," he said solemnly, "though I make no promises. You bring out my best qualities." As Emily finally got out of the car, Daniel caught her hand. "Emily, thank you." "For what?" "For giving me the chance to be just Daniel. and for letting me see who Emily Carter really is beneath all that strength and independence. Thank you for helping me remember who that person was." As she watched his car disappear into the Manhattan traffic, Emily realized that her plan for revenge had turned into something infinitely better than she could have imagined. She'd hired a fake boyfriend to prove she was over her ex. Instead, she'd found someone who made her excited about her future for the first time in months. James Mitchell could keep his corporate ladder and his perfect international girlfriend, who was now his ex-international ex-girlfriend, Emily thought with satisfaction. Emily Carter had found something real, and she was ready to see where it would lead. 3 months later, Emily stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of her new office on the 35th floor of the Sterling & Associates building, watching the February snow-dust Central Park like powdered sugar. Her nameplate on the door read, "Emily Carter, Senior Account Coordinator," and she still felt a thrill every time she saw it. "Knock, knock," came a familiar voice from her doorway. She turned to see Daniel leaning against the frame, holding 2 coffee cups and wearing that smile that still made her stomach flutter. He'd traded his tuxedo for dark jeans and a charcoal sweater, but he was just as devastatingly handsome in casual clothes. "Mr. Brooks," she said formally, though her eyes were dancing with mischief, "I don't believe you have an appointment." "I have a standing appointment with my girlfriend every Tuesday at 2 p.m. Coffee break, remember?" Emily grinned, abandoning her professional facade as she crossed to accept the coffee. "Best part of my week." "Just your week? I'm insulted." Daniel pulled her close for a quick kiss, careful not to spill their drinks. "How did the Thompson presentation go this morning?" "They loved it. Sarah said it was the most comprehensive campaign strategy she'd seen from our department." Emily settled into one of her office chairs, still amazed that she had an office with actual chairs for visitors. "I think we're going to land the account." "Of course you are. You're brilliant at this. Don't let it go to my head. I'm still figuring out the whole being in charge of people thing." Daniel sat across from her, his expression proud and fond. "You're a natural leader, Emily. Everyone on your team adores you." "Speaking of which," Emily said, pulling out her phone, "did you see what Marcus posted on Instagram?" She showed him a photo of Marcus and a striking brunette woman at a trendy Soho restaurant, both laughing over cocktails. The caption read, "Thanks to my beta tester for proving that the Husband for a Day app actually works, shutting it down to focus on real relationships. Us deleted the app. Gia found the perfect client." Daniel chuckled. He met Rachel through the app too. Apparently she hired someone for her sister's wedding, and Marcus decided to handle that appointment personally. They've been inseparable ever since. Good for him, though I'm selfishly glad he's shutting down the service. I don't want any other women discovering what an excellent fake boyfriend I am. "Oh, you were terrible at being fake," Emily teased. "Way too genuine, completely unprofessional." "I'll take that as a compliment." Emily's assistant knocked on the open door. "Emily, Mr. Sterling wants to see you in the conference room when you have a moment." "Of course, tell him I'll be right there." Emily stood, smoothing her skirt. "Probably wants to discuss the Morrison Industries pitch." "Actually," Daniel said, standing as well, "he asked me to escort you up." Emily raised an eyebrow. "Since when do board advisors escort account coordinators to meetings?" "Since those account coordinators are also dating said board advisors and might need moral support for important announcements." Emily's heart started beating faster. "Daniel, what's going on?" "You'll see, trust me." The elevator ride to the executive conference room felt familiar. It was the same route Emily had taken countless times as James's secretary, but everything was different now. She was different now. Richard Sterling stood at the head of the polished conference table, along with 3 other senior partners Emily recognized but had rarely spoken to directly. They all smiled as she entered. "Emily, please sit down," Sterling said warmly. "Daniel, thank you for bringing her up." Emily shot Daniel a questioning look, but he just smiled encouragingly and took a seat along the wall, clearly there as an observer rather than a participant. "Emily," Sterling began, "over the past 3 months you've exceeded every expectation we had when we promoted you to Senior Account Coordinator. The Thompson campaign was brilliant. Your team management skills are exceptional, and your client relationships are among the strongest in the company." "Thank you, sir. I love the work." "Which brings us to why we're here. We're creating a new position, Director of Client Relations. and we'd like you to consider taking it." Emily blinked, certain she'd misheard. "I'm sorry, did you say director? You'd be overseeing all client relationship strategies, managing a team of 12 coordinators, and working directly with the senior partners on major accounts. It's a significant promotion with a salary and benefits package to match." Emily felt dizzy. 6 months ago, she'd been crying in the office bathroom over James's betrayal. Now she was being offered a director position at one of Manhattan's most prestigious marketing firms. I don't know what to say." "Say yes," called Daniel from across the room, earning chuckles from the partners. "What Mr. Brooks said," Sterling agreed with a smile. "Emily, you've earned this. Your promotion has nothing to do with your personal relationships and everything to do with your professional excellence." Emily looked around the room at the faces of the senior partners, all nodding encouragingly. Then her eyes found Daniel, who was watching her with obvious pride and love. "Yes," she said finally. "Yes, I accept." The room erupted in congratulations and handshakes. Sterling explained that her new office would be on the 40th floor, with a view of both Central Park and the Hudson River. She'd start in her new role next Monday, with a 2-week transition period to hand off her current accounts. As the meeting concluded and the partners filed out, Emily remained seated, still processing everything that had happened. "You okay?" Daniel asked, moving to sit beside her. "I think so. It's just a lot to take in." "You deserve this, Emily. Every bit of it. I know, it's just hard to believe how much my life has changed since that awful night when James broke up with me." Daniel took her hand, intertwining their fingers. "Sometimes the worst things that happen to us end up leading to the best things." "Very philosophical, Mr. Brooks." "I have my moments." He lifted their joined hands and kissed her knuckles. "So, Director Carter, how do you want to celebrate?" Emily grinned. "Well, there's this new director who probably needs to buy a celebratory dinner for her very patient boyfriend who's been putting up with her work stress for 3 months. I like this director already. She sounds generous." "She is. She's also crazy about this guy who pretended to be her fake boyfriend and ended up becoming the real thing. Lucky guy. Lucky girl." As they stood to leave the conference room, Emily caught sight of the Manhattan skyline through the windows. The city stretched out endlessly in all directions, full of possibilities and new beginnings. "Daniel?" "Yeah?" "That first night at the Rainbow Room when you said I wasn't powerless, that I just needed reminding. You were right. But you know what the best part is?" "What's that?" "I didn't just remember who I was. I discovered who I could become." Daniel pulled her close, kissing her softly in the empty conference room 40 floors above the bustling streets of Manhattan. "I love who you're becoming," he murmured against her lips. "And I love getting to see it happen." "Good," Emily said, smiling up at the man who had started as her fake boyfriend and become her real future. "Because you're stuck with me now, Mr. Brooks. Best fate I could imagine, Director Carter." As they walked out of Sterling and Associates together, Emily thought about the journey that had brought them here. She'd hired Daniel to help her get through one difficult evening, to prove to her ex and her colleagues that she was fine without James. Instead, she'd found something infinitely more valuable. She'd found herself. And along the way, she'd found love. Real, honest, supportive love, with a man who saw her strength even when she couldn't see it herself. James Mitchell, wherever he was now, had done her the biggest favor of her life when he broke her heart, because that heartbreak had led her straight to Daniel Brooks. And as they stepped out into the crisp February air, Emily knew with absolute certainty that this was just the beginning of their story.